everybody. Welcome to the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert. I'm Amy Zawi. Today we have a distinguished expert, a gentleman with knowledge and insights that are so valuable for all of us to know and hear, John Guandolo. You can find him and many of his insightful interviews on Rumble and Twitter and his website, johnguandolo.com, and I'll be sharing all those links with you. John has a very unique insight into counterterrorism, world geopolitics, as well as the intricacies of how those things affect us at the community level and what we can do about it. John is a Christian, and he has a great heart for American principles and values and our Judeo-Christian ethic, and he is willing to fight for those things for the betterment of our whole community. So John, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. And your expertise is so wide and so great, but I really wanted to focus today on your knowledge of counterterrorism and how that affects our lives today and what's going on in the world, particularly Israel. So first, before you get into the details, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this position of knowing all this information and feeling you must share these messages with the greater community?
So first of all, thank you for having me. And, it's an interesting journey to get me to where I am. I went to the Naval Academy. I got commissioned as a Marine officer. I served in an infantry unit and combat and then a reconnaissance unit, and left the Marine Corps, which I never thought I would do, but I felt called into government service and joined the FBI and worked in the criminal division for about 5 years or a little less, and then after 9/11 joined the counterterrorism division. I was stationed in the Washington, D.C. field office, and I had a lot of different experiences. I was a paramedic. I was on the SWAT team. I ended up becoming the SWAT team leader for the Washington field office team of the FBI. And both domestically and overseas, I had a lot of experience and came to know the information about what we're discussing, about the Islamic movement, the communist movement, how they work together at the international, national, and local level through investigations. And really, I'll just say what really struck me as an agent was discovering that all of the Islamic organizations that the FBI was outreaching to and working with to help, I'll put in quotes, understand what was going on in the Islamic community, they're all hostile, 100%. And it's very difficult today to find a prominent Islamic group in America at the national level that's not hostile. And you see that these groups support Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the way they do it is different because they do it through subverting themselves into the process, the bureaucratic political process, and driving foreign policy, national counterterrorism strategies, policing policies, local community efforts, interfaith outreach, all of that. I mean, I will say it's a brilliant warfighting strategy, but they've got a lot of Americans and I would say the vast majority of our leaders convinced that they're innocuous when in fact that they're literally no different than Hamas. They support Hamas, they support their tactics. These guys just happen to wear suits and work in our communities. But that's how I came to do it. And while I was I created the first program in the government to teach agents and analysts and leaders about this because I was frustrated. I was working with people that didn't understand this. And I didn't understand it until literally I was kind of thrust into it through my investigative work. That's how I came to know this.
So it's kind of like, if I can make a parallel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So while, for example, in Israel and the Middle East, there's a hot war where these terrorist groups and these terrorists do physical attacks. They blow up bombs, they invade kibbutzim en masse. They have missiles shooting over into the innocent civilian areas. But the other side of that coin in the West is rather than a hot fight or a fire or war, it's this sheep in what is it, wolves in sheep's clothing, where they're infiltrating the systems, as you said, in their suits and through the bureaucracy, and creating a false sense of we're your friends, we're all trying to work together, but it's not actually the case. I've done some reports in the past where so much of the funding for things like CARE, the Muslim Brotherhood, Students for Justice in Palestine, the funding and the founding organizers of those groups tend to be the same active people or related to them that are in that sort of hot war in the Middle East. Is that true? Are they all interconnected at some point? They just have different missions depending on where they are?
Yes, I mean, that's right on the mark. They know each other in many cases, like personally. In some cases, there are family ties there as well. But that's absolutely true. And you have to know, and it's no secret, this is what's shocking is when you just do, if people were to do just a modicum of research, you will see that the information slaps you right in the face of who these people are, what they say. And really, I find when I and my team, when we train communities, for instance, whether we're talking to citizens or local police or county council or city council people, they're shocked at how obvious and easy to find this information is. And I feel like my job, really, what I've done, because I've been doing it longer than anyone else in the country, is I just put it all together in a way that they can understand it, that flows and makes sense. But they're shocked at how, number one, that they didn't know it or understand it, since all of this information is easily accessible and easily proven true about these networks. Again, you said it, they're doing the same thing in Israel. They're just not as successful, but they have had success in Israel by people who pretend to be friendly. But this is how they do it in Europe, in North America, in Asia, and in the Middle East. But in the Islamic countries, you've got much broader support than they publicly will tell you. You know, people are saying, for instance, this week we saw the news that Jordan and Saudi Arabia have told Iran, you can't use our airspace if you're going to attack Israel. And people are, think that proves that Jordan and Saudi Arabia, therefore, is friendly to Israel, and that would be foolish to believe that. But these are the kinds of things they'll do to put a public face on something when what they're actually doing and the actions they're actually taking are hostile to the United States and Israel.
Did you find, or do you find, and I want you to tell us a little bit more about the work you do at the community level and the training and stuff, but before we get to that, I have a question. Do you find that when you present this information, you learned this firsthand, just discovering it in real time as the 2000s unfolded and we were in the war on terror, and then you brought this information out, you put the pieces together and you bring it out and you deliver it to people so that they get it, they can see the whole picture. Do you feel like people don't want to accept it, or there's pushback? Are you accused of Islamophobia? I mean, that just drives me crazy that we see anti-Semitism at record highs. We see Christianity attacked, maybe not, physically, but philosophically in the community. And yet it's always, well, Islamophobia. Do you find that in the people that you work with personally, is there a pushback that you have to overcome?
Well, yes, and globally, we have many Christians are being killed by the Islamic movement, including in the United States. But to focus on the pushback, I'll just go back to even when I was still in the FBI and was asked to quietly brief people on Capitol Hill, and senior people, like people running committees like the Intel Committee, and then when I was recruited out of the FBI by the Department of Defense to do strategic analysis on this threat, both the Islamic movement and the communist movement in the United States, I found that the very courageous people, the Sue Myrick's and the Michelle Bachmans and the Louis Gomerts and the Trent Franks and others that I worked with who spoke out about these issues, it was Republicans that attacked them primarily. It was Republicans, people who were either bought off, people who were cowards. The Paul, the Marco Rubios, the John Boehners, people like that who attacked them, John McCain, and others who attacked their own party members for speaking truth about real dangers in this country. And when people ask why do people do it, I've found it's a number of reasons. For many people, they're more worried about their reputation than they are about doing their job. And these people swear an oath to the Constitution, which a great majority of them have failed and are failing to do. In some cases, like people like Mitch McConnell and others, they're committing treason. I mean, they're agents of foreign powers. We've got plenty of reports out of current and former members of Congress and senators working directly for organizations that are overseen directly by Chinese intelligence and defense programs. So, so on both sides of the fence here, you've got. I mean, this is whether you realize it or not, it's a huge question, but you've got people in the CIA, the FBI, the State Department who hold top secret SCI clearances, who are working with these people, and if they speak truth about Islam and the Islamic movement, then they won't get that seven-figure salary they're going to get from Qatar or Saudi Arabia when they leave the CIA, FBI, State Department, military. We've got a lot of corrupt generals and admirals that then go and work for these countries that are traitors. And I am astounded at the state of America today. And not one leader on either side of the political aisle is explaining to the country what's actually going on. None. I mean, you've got literally France and England are now being run by communists. They're attacking their citizens and they're defending the jihadis. I mean, this is what's going on in real time this week, right now. And, I look at the social media posts and Republican congressmen and senators are talking about gas prices and how, Kamala Harris's policy on X, Y, and Z could affect this and that. I'm like, we're in a full-blown, no BS war right now. And what's happening in Israel is a part of that war that we're in. And it's like America just says, well, if we pretend we're not in it, it won't affect us. And that's just, this is the insanity. And really, it exemplifies the horrifying failure of American leadership. And that's why the work I've worked at the national level, at the state level, and the local level. And what I found is by taking the message to citizens and training counties, that has proven to be very successful. Because I think that on both sides of the political aisle, American leaders are failing. And they're demonstrating they're incapable of leading America right now.
You bring up a good point, and you just mentioned it, and I'm sure it's part of your training when you're presenting the whole picture to folks at any level. But you mentioned, and I'll share the I think it was Charlie Kirk, the FBI whistleblower episode, where you really dig into the details of a lot of these issues. That marriage of the Islamists and the Marxists or the communists, and how together, if you looked at both those groups, you'd think they'd be fighting each other, right? Because one is theocratic and one is, atheistic. And either way, they're both totalitarians. But they've sort of aligned themselves, and you just mentioned some of the ways by China and these terrorist groups, Iran, for example. They're working together to subvert, I guess, the entire West, whether it's America, Western Europe, and the little piece of democracy in the Middle East called Israel. Can you comment a little bit more about that that unholy alliance between the Marxists and communists and and the Islamists or the jihadists?
Sure. And you just nailed a couple really important points. First, they're totalitarian. These two movements seek to, it's all about control of the state and power. That's it. They just go about it in different ways. And they will fight each other eventually once they conquer the West, which they seek to do. And I would argue they're in the last stages of their war. What we're seeing in real time right now, this minute, is the unfolding of the final phase as they've now taken France and England, as we see, Venezuela, people being literally killed in the streets who are patriots fighting for what's right and for liberty. In Bangladesh, people are being slaughtered by the Muslims. This is a global war, and they're working together. Communist China, a few years ago, entered into a strategic partnership with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So at the international level, that's the marriage of the two biggest powers on this broker. We see and by the way, it is not a small thing that one of the most powerful Muslim Brotherhood families, working directly with Al Qaeda, I might add, the Abadan family, Huma Abadan, now engaged to Alex Soros.
Right.
This is the hard left movement marrying literally the jihadi movement and some of the key leaders. You've got in the United States the leader of Hamas in the United States today, Nihad Awad of the Council on American Islamic Relations, at a Muslim Brotherhood conference in Chicago before the 2016 election, the Muslim American Society Islamic Circle of North America conference, saying Black Lives Matter is our matter. Their campaign's our campaign. That's Chinese Communist Black Lives Matter, BLM, created out of the largest Chinese Communist front groups in America, Liberation Road, Freedom Road Socialist Organization. And at the local level, we see around the country where the rubber meets the road, the communists and jihadis working seamlessly. Hamas Muslim Brotherhood groups like CARE, like ISNA, like ICNA, like Muslim Student Association, Muslim American Society, and others working with Communist Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Democratic Socialists of America, Code Pink, Communist Party USA, RevCom, Rise and Resist. All these groups are all working together at the ground level. And the reason that the work I do focuses on the communist Islamic movement, because people ask us, what about the secular humanist movement or the Satanist movement or the World Economic Forum or United Nations? Well, yeah, those are all hostile to liberty. But the people actually, where the rubber meets the road in anywhere USA, it's the communists and the jihadis that are the hands making it happen. And that's why when you identify them at the local level and flush them out of your community and take away their ability to operate at the ground level, you've taken away any strength they have in your community. And by doing that and reestablishing a Republican form of government at the county level, you are actually fortifying your county. And then when you get adjacent counties to do that, you're literally putting freedom on the offensive where it belongs. If there was a better way to win this war, I'd be focusing on that. But the federal government in the United States is utterly corrupt. The key components of government are controlled by these same adversaries of liberty. And so and by the way, at the state level, not one governor in the last 20 years has done anything to put their finger on the enemy and do anything about it. They've changed policies. They've put in laws. They've fixed issues. But no war has ever been won by doing any of those things. Wars are won by identifying the enemy and vanquishing them. And that's what we're training communities to do at the local level. It's the only way we're going to win this war.
You make an interesting point. I want to ask you about it. You're talking about these, these communist elements and the jihadist elements in their various groups that you named coming together at the ground level in our communities. And the first thing that comes to my mind that manifests that is what we have seen on college campuses. there's no greater community level location than your local college campus. And I mean, obviously, students come from all over the country or all over the state, but I mean, can you comment at all about this marriage that you saw for decades, bubbling up in the government, these suits that were infiltrating the bureaucracy? Was that also going on, and the faculties and the funding organizations for universities, and that's how we ended up with what we saw Columbia and UPenn and I mean, just all over the place, prestigious institutes of learning, renowned for decades, if not centuries, just turn into warlike preschoolers, not understanding that they're defending and cheering for rapists and murderers and people that believe in death more than life.
So short answer is yes. There's a huge impact here, and I maybe want to begin answering the question with this simple comment that what we're experiencing right now, not just in America, in the West in general, globally, is the culmination of a 100 plus year communist movement in America, a 60 plus year Islamic movement in America, and everything they've worked for is literally blooming. I would actually argue it's blossomed. It's now in its like final stages. And
I see what you mean. It's like the dandelion that got to fruition and all its little pieces fly off into everywhere.
that's right. And
at that
what
point.
we are seeing on college campuses, we know as a matter of fact they were targets of the communist movement. 80 years ago or more than 80 years ago. We see really in the 30s a real effort, and the focus then was college campuses, and then we see focus on high school campuses, and then getting per the communist objectives, going into schools, taking control of teacher unions, taking control of a number of training pipelines for training for teachers, and really putting the communist line of effort and line of operation into effect in the elementary, junior high, high school levels, as well as universities, which I would argue they captured years ago. So no, it's not a surprise. And because the communists and jihadis work together in almost all of their lines of operation, the college campuses is, I would argue, the second most important place or line of operation for them where they work together. So you have the Muslim Student Association, Students for Justice in Palestine, and a number of other groups on college campuses working together with real communist groups. And you get, of course, violent and nonviolent protests. Mm-hmm. I would add the number one place, the sharpest tip of their spear is the interfaith outreach to both the Christian and Jewish communities. And I want to say this for your audience, 100% of the interfaith outreach movement in the United States is controlled by these people. Some are exclusively controlled by communists who actually created the interfaith outreach movement, the communist movement, but most of them, it's a joint effort, or it's controlled by the Islamic movement, specifically CARE, ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America, the International Institute for Islamic Thought, Islamic Society of North America. Those are the four big organizations that drive it. Where I live in Dallas, it's primarily the communists control it. The Industrial Areas Foundation, which was created by Saul Alinsky, they run it. And it's run out of their headquarters in Houston for the IAF. But all across the country, that's who's controlling this. And the goal is to undermine your Christian or Jewish faith. It's to get you to come to a common ground where you literally deny your faith. You have to in order to participate in this. And it's very effective. But the college campuses and the interfaith outreach are really their two most significant operations where they're crushing it, and they're crushing us. The fact that they've owned the administrations at the national level, presidential, the White House since Clinton, and national security advisors and attorney generals and secretaries of defense coming forward. I mean, they've had people in those offices for 3 decades now. I mean, we're just getting it handed to us on many levels. That's why I have found the most effective level to really start a wildfire is at the local level, because citizens, many of them who still have the ability to think and reason, are able to actually see through the BS, and they're willing to take action unencumbered by, anything else.
That's a good point. We always think about, people kind of think about when things are bad, you start changing from the top, but it's really the reverse. You have to change from the bottom up, which is what really democracy is all about, or even representative republic that we have is that we have to, when the citizenry is on the right track and has the right thinking and their right minds and their right values, then that manifests as it bubbles up with what they can tolerate and also whom they vote for at the local level and beyond.
Right.
Let me ask you your thoughts on something. So we have a hard time getting our leaders to call things what they really are. You mentioned before that Christians are, physically and violently attacked. We know the Jewish people are, domestically and in Europe, and obviously in Israel, it's under physical attack as well as a PR attack. Why is it that that's so acceptable? It's acceptable to be anti-Semitic. It's acceptable to be anti-Christian. But why do our leaders who are running for high office feel the need to say we can't call something a terrorist? We can't call something an Islamic terrorist. Fight those terms. I've heard recently that some of our candidates are just pushing people to fight the idea of calling something what it is, whether it's calling someone an illegal alien or an unlawful entrant or whatever the word is, or whether we're calling them a terrorist. And at the same time, we had President Biden on record saying the number one threat to democracy is white supremacy, which is always a problem, but it's not the problem that, everybody knows if the KKK is walking around the neighborhood, everybody's going to go, "You're ridiculous, call the police, get out of here." But everything else seems to be acceptable. Why is it, do you think that, words matter and we can't identify the terrorists and the bad elements for what they are, and when the good elements are being persecuted, it's kind of okay, it's all in context.
Right. So great question. And the short answer is because that's the enemy's line of operation. That's the strategy. 90% of the entire war we're up against is in the nonviolent realm. It's in the nonviolent realm. It's primarily information warfare. And from a military perspective, we call that the information battle space. The violence we see, for instance, the violence that Israel is dealing with, the attacks in the West, be it in Canada, the United States, or Europe, or wherever else it may be, in Africa, those attacks are meant to move the much larger nonviolent effort forward. So they have an attack, and then we say, well, we need to do something, and then in walks the suit-wearing jihadi, the suit-wearing Al-Qaeda guy, the suit-wearing Hamas guy, the suit-wearing ISIS guy, the suit-wearing whatever, and they say, well, we oh my goodness, it's so convenient because we have all these answers for you. And so we turn to jihadis to tell us how to defeat jihadis, and we wonder why we're getting our asses kicked. That's why. And controlling the language is exactly how they do it. So we see the 9/11 report uses hundreds of times words like Islam, jihad, Sharia, Al-Qaeda, words that actually identify the threat. Because on the Islamic side, the Islamic movement, 100% of the people we kill or capture, and especially the ones we capture on the battlefield or we arrest in Europe and the United States, when they get their opportunity to speak in court, for instance, They say, well, why would you do this? Because it's a command from Allah to wage war against non-Muslims until we have an Islamic State under Sharia.
Right.
That's it.
That's
They
it.
say it. They write it. They put it in videos. It's their doctrine. You can read it in English. So it's very simple. What does ISIS and Al Qaeda want? An Islamic State under Sharia. What does the Muslim Brotherhood bylaws say is their goal? An Islamic State under Sharia. What does Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, what does the Iranian Constitution say?
Mhm.
What does, by the way, the Egyptian Constitution say? It's an Islamic State under Sharia. Sharia is the law of the land for them. So until you understand that, you're not going to get this war.
Yeah.
So it's the nonviolent, it's counterintelligence, espionage, subverting the key institutions in the community. It's psychological warfare, it's propaganda, but it is also nuclear war, chemical, biological warfare, conventional war. It's all of that. It's what we call terrorism. All of that is a part of it. And so this is what, going back to your question earlier, these two movements, the communist movement, the Islamic movement, their understanding of warfare is vastly different from our understanding and from the West's understanding in general. It's everything is okay as long as we win. The
Yeah.
West is willing to lose so long as we do it politely. And this is why we're losing. We are literally on the cusp of losing. And so one of the greatest weapons you have is to speak truth and call it what it is, because it cuts through everything. It's one of the principles of the battle plan that we put together, and my colleagues put together, because it cuts through all of this and really takes away their ability to operate. So I'll give you one very powerful example. Our government, because during the Bush administration, we had people that were unaware of the war in which we were engaged. We had people that were unprofessional, incompetent, that they went over to England, where this combating violent extremism was created, by the way, by the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK, Muslim Council of Britain, Muslim Association of Britain, and we gobbled it up and brought it back here as a huge Trojan horse. Well, when we target violent extremists, what we're not targeting are communists and jihadis. See that? And legally, the oath of office says you swear to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and the word enemies is legally defined in federal code. The phrase violent extremists is not. So as long as you're chasing violent extremists, you're not chasing the enemy. And this is how well they are crushing us.
Yeah, they're
This is how
distracting us over here so they can go about their
That's
subversion
right.
over there.
They've got us chasing white supremacists. Now, so the question is, why? Well, in the case of Mr. Biden and, Ms. Harris, it's because they're bad people. They're enemies of the Republic. These are really bad people. And so are the people that, produced this. But it's not limited to one party.
Mhm.
Like I said before, we have our Lindsey Grahams, our Mitch McConnells, the Marco Rubios. You have the bad people that are doing bad things, and they put on a very pretty face and act like they're moderate or whatever. But when push comes to shove, they become the weapon against patriots, right? The Nikki Haley's, the list is really endless on the Republican side. It's such a small number of people, and yet nobody, not one on the Republican side, is actually talking the way you and I are talking. Nobody is explaining to the American people that this is the actual threat we're dealing with, that France and the UK are currently under enemy control, that these should be, huge, sirens and red, bells going off, that the ship is sinking more rapidly, and we need to be. Well, what are we doing? Nothing. Go to work, come home. Don't change. I mean, people should be putting all full stop. Americans, full stop. Yeah, no, I'm not going to work this week. We this is what we're going to do first and foremost. But we're like, well, if I might get fired or I might do that, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get what you deserve, which is you're going to lose everything,
Yeah.
everything.
And we can't rely on not only do elected officials talk only about usually what serves their own election cycle, we also have a press that we can't rely on. The press used to, remember the muckrakers 100 years ago, they used to dig out the dirt and let everybody know about it. And the press is running cover as well, the mainstream press, anyhow.
That's right.
So that's why we need outlets like Rumble and X and whatever we can get away with on Facebook to post.
Well, what you're doing here,
Yep.
in the best way you're able, you're getting the truth out. And again, let's have a dialogue. What happened to that? If people, I've never shied away from people who disagree with me. But if you're going to disagree, bring the facts to the table,
Yeah.
bring the reality to the table,
The
and
art of
challenge it.
debate is gone right now. Nobody's teaching critical thinking at the lower school level, let alone in colleges. It's all a big screaming fest, and it's very disappointing to see as an educator myself. And I saw the infiltration of the teachers' colleges back in the 90s when I was in a teachers' college. I had arguments with some of my professors about how is this some of the curriculum, which is the precursor of what we're dealing with today with the DEI stuff and the woke stuff and sort of that progressivism on steroids. So it's very disappointing, and I understand why a lot of parents of young kids and even college kids are, don't know where to send their children for an education. Not everybody's equipped to homeschool, of course. But before I want you to tell our audience about exactly what you do and where we can find that information, so we can act at a community level and learn more. But before we do that, do you have any comment on the current timely situation with Iran right now and all the saber rattling and Israel bracing for attack? Is there any insight you can share, or is that still being worked out amongst your sources, the details
Well,
there?
all the information that we have points to Iran's actually going to do what it says it's going to do. And I have not seen any reason that they won't do that. I think it doesn't mean they will. There's nothing's 100% sure. They're weighing a lot of things, but again, like what we're seeing right now with the communist and Islamic movement, is they view the time is now. Like everything, the time is ripe. They just were emboldened by taking France and the UK on the communist side. They've been emboldened by Hamas brutally attacking Israel. They've been emboldened by the fact the United States is being currently led by people that are going to help them, are helping them, giving Iran billions of dollars, taking Iran from a place where they were literally almost bankrupt to a place they're flush with cash, and giving them the green light. And you've got these other hostile nations, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, that are just truly emboldened and given the green light. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. They believe the time is now. They're watching what's going on in the United States. That's what I think you're witnessing literally right now.
And I want people to realize this, that no matter what the rhetoric is on the news or on college campuses with ignorant protesters, it's not about the little strip of land. The 22 Arab nations, most of them, all of them Muslim, Pakistan, Iran, they don't need that little strip of land called Israel that's the size of New Jersey. It's never about the land. It's about the presence of that freedom loving, liberty loving, democratic peoples who represent us in the West as well. It's an ideological, it's not about the piece of land. I mean, would you say that? I don't see how anybody can justify that. Oh, well, this whole thing in Israel is because they took the land and they colonized the land and they shouldn't be living there. There's plenty of space for everybody to live. If it's about the people, and we need to understand that in America, it's not about, yeah, eventually they want our resources if that's what they get all the land, but it's about squashing that whole good side of humanity, I think. Your thoughts?
So I think you're right on the mark. What's interesting is uh, even before Hamas officially existed, we have the documents, the worldwide movement plan that was discovered. It was written in early 1980s and was discovered after 9/11 in a raid on a chalet in Switzerland of a senior Muslim Brotherhood leader named Yusuf Nada. And what it, it's their guide marks, and we see what came from that then was strategic documents for Europe and North America. And it says they're going to use the quote Palestinian conflict as a tool, as a line of operation to destroy Israel, to accomplish their goal, which is to create an Islamic State under Sharia. Don't ever forget that's their goal. Sharia imposed on every human on earth. The goal of the communist movement, communism, and that's it. It's not that complicated. And people who try to make it complicated, I think, get lost in the weeds instead of just stepping back. They're telling you what they want.
That is true. There's nobody, I mean, you can do a quick research and do a Google Translate if the documents aren't already translated in English. These subversive factors, these agents of Satan, I would call them, are pretty open about what they want, which is why I'm dumbfounded why Americans and college students and politicians keep trying to talk about freedom fighters or resistance against colonialism. It has nothing to do with that. It's the counterfeit to Judeo-Christian values, and that's what Sharia is, and that's what the Marxist ideology is. It's a counterfeit to or a replacement for a God-centered peoples, not a theocracy, but just a God-centered people. John, tell us a little bit about your organization and where we can find information so we can learn about what you do at that community level, the trainings, and we'll make sure we direct our viewers there so they can learn more and contact you. We would love that.
Well, I think the best way to reach out is through johnguandolo.com. The training, what we do is we come in, and the training is a day and a half, 1 day to a day and a half, depending on the community, and we can tailor it. Ideally, we come in on a one afternoon. We spend 3 to 4 hours laying out the reality of the threat, where we are in the war, and that helps open people's eyes. And we specifically focus. We do talk strategically globally, but really it's focused on the United States, and then in their state and in their community, what is actually going on, and then we show them how to build a team. Meaning, let's say there's 40, 50 people there from the same county, how to organize that team, how to build that team, and then how to identify the components of this hostile movement, the communist movement, the Islamic movement, their collaborators, people financing them, local finance institutions, banks, your chamber of commerce, your local city council, your school board, the things in the community. Then how to identify the bad guys and the good guys in the community and create a comprehensive plan to lawfully flush the bad guys out or render them incapable of operating in your county, how to restore true Republican government at the county level. And that, by doing that, you literally fortify your county. And then with adjacent counties, you build that out, or you take it to other key counties in the state and you build that out. And what we're finding in areas that we're working in and have worked in is it's amazing what citizens are able to do once they know how to operate really in this way. And you're literally building educated, engaged citizens. So they're not just engaging on the political level. They now understand You have a comprehensive plan. And how are you going to deal with these things in your community? And really using very savvy and devious ways at dealing with the bad guys, but lawful ways.
Exactly.
You can flush people out of your community lawfully. Not all the things that we teach are nice, but these are enemies. They're real enemies, and they need to be moved out of your community. And so it's really cool, and people get very energized and excited about it because they're literally liberating their county. And we're way behind the power curve right now. So the good news is we're busier than we've ever been,
Good.
and we're training people kind of back to back right now, and it's great. And we're finding it's a lot of fun. So you can reach out to us at you reach out to me at johnguandolo.com. We'll start the process.
That's wonderful. And I am so glad that your framework is based on education and facts and information and using our constitutional framework, our system of justice to exercise those rights, even if it may seem unpleasant. It's not violent. It's not subversive. It's, no one can accuse you of being sort of an insurrectionist, and that's a wonderful thing that you can use good and good ways to fight for good. And it kind of reminds me of, you're kind of like the lay Christian's version of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. What he did in Germany to rally the pastors and beg the pastors to keep to keep truth and biblical principles beyond just the preaching the gospel at the pulpit, but to get into the community and make disciples and take that attitude into the community. We may not have had a Holocaust if the people, if more of the pastors and the congregations did something. And so your work, you kind of remind me of not in the pastor realm, but in the citizen realm, like the citizens Bonhoeffer with what you're doing. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I really, first of all, I very much appreciate it. That's a huge compliment. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we'll be praying for you and your work, and we'll be encouraging people to read your studies and watch your programming and get involved in their own community and reach out to your organization to get help to do that legally and with credible information and processes. So I really do
Thank
appreciate
you.
all the time you gave us.
You just mentioned it. I do encourage people to read the Hamas report that's on the website. And thank goodness it's been getting some good actual media coverage, which is shocking. But I meant it to be an easy read, but to give really an overall understanding to people of what you and I have been talking about here for the last 30 minutes or so.
And it's more important than ever, not only because we have national elections coming up, but there's a lot of elections at the local level, and people can get involved at their county level, their school board level, what have you, their local universities, voice the truth, and that you're willing to fight for it. I think that's important. And you can do it in a way that follows your Christian values. You can do it lawfully and inside the framework of our justice system. So that's really good information and really good encouragement for all of us. John, thank you so much for your time. God bless. We will continue to pray for you and our leadership and our country and for Israel as they are on the front lines of the threats now from that unholy alliance of the Marxists and the Islamic jihadists. So God bless you for all you're doing and your hard work and all the information you're providing us.
You're welcome. Thank you, and God bless you and your audience.
Bye-bye.